Regressive Sticks in the Mud may complain that New Trek is too woke, but as a queer woman, I love this about it, and Lower Decks is definitely no exception. Hi, I'm Admiral Cat, and welcome to Admiral Cat's Trek Quest, your home for progressive reviews and deep dive analyses of all things Star Trek. In this series, we talk about queer allegory and representation in Star Trek, and in this episode specifically, we'll be tackling the LGBTQIA representation in Star Trek Lower Decks. We'll begin with arguably the main character of the series. Okay, technically the series has multiple mains, but it feels like she's the mainliest of the mains, Beckett Mariner. While a careful viewer may pick up on some queer vibes as early as Season 1, Episode 1, Second Contact, when she remarks that Ensign Samantha Rutherford's date that night, Ensign Barnes, is crazy hot, we don't get confirmation that she's queer until Season 2. In said season's third episode, We'll Always Have Tom Paris, we find out that Mariner is indeed queer as hell. On a mission to recover a Cation libido post for the felinoid chief medical officer of the USS Cerritos, Dr. Donna, Ensigns Devon Attendee and Beckett Mariner accidentally end up breaking it, and after a misadventure to Starbase Earhart where it is further damaged, they decide to take it to Tendy's cousin who works at a thieves' den at a pirate outpost to have him repair it. Upon seeing Tendy's cousin Dawani, who is apparently ripped, Mariner is smitten and tells Tendy that she needs to warn her if they're going to be meeting up with a sexy bad boy because that's her type. To which Tendy responds that she didn't know Mariner had a thing for bad boys, at which Beckett adds that she's also always dating bad girls, bad gender non binary babes, ruthless alien masterminds, and bad binars. So clearly, Mariner is pansexual. We even get additional queer Trek payoff for her in the form of a lesbian relationship with crewmate and fellow lower decker ensign Jennifer Schrayon. This character is first introduced as more of a background character in Season 2, Episode 1, Strange Energies, when she walks in on the middle of Beckett's holodeck workout program, in which Beckett stages a Cardassian prison break, to inform her that the ship's captain and Mariner's mother, Carol Freeman, wants to see her in her ready room. It's interesting to see this relationship develop because, as Beckett notes after Jennifer leaves, in the beginning she apparently really hates that Andorian. But by season 3, episode 3, Mining the Mind's Minds, they're dating. In this episode, in which three of the Lower Decks Fab Four, Ensigns Mariner, Rutherford, and Bradward Boimler, are assigned duty removing psychic minds, which are stone orbs created by a silicate race known as the Scrubble, and which bring people's fantasies to life when they get too near to them, then turn them to stone if they touch the fantasy creation, it turns out that Mariner's fantasy is watching Jennifer in a bikini yell at First Officer Commander Jack Ransom. Knowing it's just a fantasy projection generated by the mind she was handling, she tells it, "Nice try, babe, but I'll hold off for the real deal back on the ship." To which Boimler inquires if the two are babing each other now, and Beckett affirms that they indeed are. Brad responds that it's nice to see her with a girlfriend, to which Mariner responds that she's not her girlfriend as they're not into labels and just hanging out. To which the fantasy Jennifer responds that she's into labels and she's fine being Mariner's hot Andorian girlfriend. Rutherford asks if that's Beckett's fantasy, which she denies, blushing, clearly affirming that it is. Although, as we'll also affirm when the minds later break and start creating nightmares, Beckett's being moving in together and getting old and boring and growing orchids with Jennifer, she's clearly not into labels because she has some commitment issues. But by episode 6 of the same season, Hear All Trust Nothing, we find out that they are indeed most definitely seriously dating when Jennifer shows up to invite Mariner to a salon her friend Castro is hosting, giving her a kiss on the cheek when she agrees to attend and meet the friends, which, as everyone knows, is a big deal in any blossoming relationship. In this B plot to the episode, Mariner does her best to fit in with Jennifer's friends until disaster strikes and the Cerritos loses power and therefore life support, at which point she does her best to try to convince everyone to put out the Impulian candles they've been making, which apparently consume twice the oxygen a human candle consumes. A suggestion at which Castro freaks out because it will apparently waste the intentions they set with said candles. At which point Beckett tries to calm everyone down instead until Jennifer pulls her aside to ask her why she's being so polite. Mariner responds that she didn't want to be bossy or mean to her friends because then they wouldn't like her, and in her estimation, their relationship wouldn't work out. Jennifer quickly corrects this misunderstanding, informing her that she likes that Beckett doesn't take shit from anyone, and was actually looking forward to seeing her tear them a new one, and telling her to go destroy them. At which point, Mariner pulls out her phaser, fires it into the air to get everyone's attention, informing them that they'll consume way less oxygen if they're unconscious, and then she proceeds to actualize her dreams by stunning everyone in the room until only she and Jennifer are left. Jennifer points out that being the only ones not stunned would be kind of a bad look, and so they kiss, and Beckett stuns herself and Jennifer together, and they fall snuggled up onto the table. It's such a cute plot, and I love seeing their relationship developed. Sadly, it doesn't last forever, as we see them go through a rough split later in the season's ninth episode, Trusted Sources. In this episode, a reporter from FNN, the Federation News Network, is sent to the Cerritos on an assignment to document them as they complete second contact missions in Admiral Buenamigo's Operation Swing By, and Captain Freeman is absolutely determined to keep her from interviewing Mariner, fearing that she'll ruin the ship's reputation. In reality, Freeman and the rest of the crew do a good enough job of that on their own, and Mariner's interview via ambushing the reporter turns out to have been the Cerritos' only saving grace. But before the interview is released and the crew finds that out, they are infuriated with Mariner, as Freeman is certain that she's the one who ruined everything and she is transferred from the ship to the dreaded Starbase 80. On her way off the ship, she runs into various crew members who chide her for supposedly ruining the interviews, including Jennifer, who attempts to give her back the candle Beckett made her at Castro's salon, which Mariner refuses, telling her to just give it to Castro. It's a heart wrenching scene and a heart wrenching plot development, and as far as we can tell, it represents their breaking up. Until Season 5, Episode 3, The Best Exotic Nanite Hotel, in which the two are paired up in a mission to capture a swarm of nanites terrorizing a giant resort station. When they meet at the transporter, Mariner is mortified to find that Jennifer apparently thinks they're still together. Jennifer babes Mariner and kisses her on the cheek and calls herself Beckett's girlfriend, to which Mariner responds mid transport, "My what?" During the mission, Beckett explains to the other lower deckers that she thought she had made it clear when she came back to the Cerritos after their parents split when she left for Starbase 80 and walked past her at the bar without saying a word instead of talking to her, that from her perspective, they were through and that they hadn't spoken in months. And she just assumed it was clear, to which new lower decker Vulcan Ensign Talim responds that assumptions are anathema to communication, and Mariner decides that she'll have no choice but to have the difficult conversation she was trying to avoid in the first place and break Jennifer's heart. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, Beckett finds out that this is apparently going to be their last mission together, as Jennifer was offered a promotion to the Manitoba. At this point, Mariner decides to go along with Jennifer's apparent misconception, dedicating herself to having a great last day together, as this will mark the end of Jariner, as Jennifer calls their relationship anyway. Hilarity, hijinks, and passive aggressive jabs ensue until we discover that Jennifer knew the whole time that Mariner considered them broken up and was just toying with her to get her to admit it and have the conversation Mariner never wanted to have in the first place, because she felt like it was unfair how the breakup ended up all being on Beckett's terms, as she never gave Jennifer a chance to apologize after finding out that Mariner was innocent of the FFN fiasco of trusted sources. In the end, They split amicably, having finally talked things out while stuck in a palm tree running from the swarm of nanites, which had by this point become a giant icosahedron. And Jennifer even remarks on how nice it is to finally have an ex who's not a mortal enemy. It's still sad to see them split, but it's a humorous plot, and at least nice that they split on good terms in the end. It would have been nice to see more of their relationship developed while it lasted, but that might have been difficult to really accomplish given Lower Deck's half hour, 10 episode a season format, and it's at least solid representation. And as with previous examples of queer representation in Star Trek Discovery, we were again treated to a future in which no one is weird about it or makes it a big deal at any point that Beckett is pansexual or that she and Jennifer share a lesbian relationship. A fine example of satisfying queer on the final frontier. While we're still on the topic of Mariner, I have to also mention a favorite queer affirming line of mine from season 4, episode 6, Parth Ferengi's Heart Place, in which Beckett torques off her Ferengi friend Quimp by getting into a drunken fistfight while they're hanging out. To which she responds, "Hey, you know me, man. I'm a wild rogue living on the edge of chaos. I sit weird in chairs. You can't predict me." And while the entirety of the line taken together just basically describes Mariner's character, the specific part about sitting weird in chairs feels very queer coded. It feels like a nod to the meme of how queer people often seem to sit in chairs as if we didn't know how. It's subtle, and if you don't know the meme, you're not gonna get it, but if you're queer and you do, it's impossible to miss. It reinforces exactly how definitively queer Mariner really is, and I love it. The queer representation in this show doesn't stop with Mariner and Jennifer, though. The next queer characters we'll be discussing are Chief Engineer Anderithio, Andy for short, Billups, and Lower Decker Ensign Samanthan Rutherford. In season 1, episode 9, Crisis Point, we actually get to see these two pair up, at least in a sense, as while it is the real Rutherford who expresses his affections for and agrees to run away with his at least homo-romantic boss in this episode, Phillips is just a holodeck character version of himself, but he was programmed along with the entire rest of the crew of the Cerritos by fellow lower decker Brad Boimler based on the entire personal log entries of the whole crew, so we can assume that his homoromanticism is in fact true to character. It's a cute and fun episode, and while naysayers may try to argue that it's just a professional crush on Samanthan's part on Andy's engineering skills, it's hard to ignore how absolutely gay he looks and sounds expressing that crush. The fact that they agree to run away together, and the fact that the hologram of ship's Dr. Donner responds to their agreement to run away together and get their own ship where they can buffer the phase coils whenever they want and fix the warp core on their time with the line, "Godspeed, you crazy faggots." More on whether or not Ta'ana can reclaim the F slur later in this video, but it's a pretty clear indication that this isn't just a platonic work crush, and that Rutherford is indeed bi, and I say bi, not gay, as he has also dated the female Ensign Barnes earlier in the series, and that Billups is at least homoromantic, if not necessarily homosexual, as we find out later in the series in Season 2, Episode 7, Where Pleasant Fountains Lie, that he is actually asexual. The A plot in this episode revolves around Prince Anderithio's mother's attempts to trick him into having sex, not with her, as Rutherford initially assumes, but with her royal guard, who are apparently trained from birth to skip foreplay, so that he may take the throne. As on his home planet of Hesperia, any member of the royal family in line for the throne who loses their virginity must take over rulership of the planet, and conversely, it seems, any member of the royal family who is in line to take the throne must also endure the royal copulation upon the death of the previous ruler in order to ascend. Throughout the episode, it is made abundantly clear that Billups does not want to have sex. Not only because it would mean leaving Starfleet and the Cerritos, but also because he's just not interested. We see an example of this when one of the Royal Guard invites him to run his full diagnostic along her bottom up, and with flat disinterest, he replies, "No, thank you." as well as when he informs his mother that the only lady he loves is 2 decks tall and pumped full of dilithium, along with the way he seems almost scared of intercourse, asking will it hurt when he is finally tricked into giving in, and proceeding with the necessary course to take the throne when his mother, the queen, fakes her death in an explosion. And when Rutherford rushes in to save him from his fate, and we see that in spite of having a man and a woman to perform the royal copulation with, not only is he still pretty unwilling, but in the end, he just can't even get it up. While he may have at least romantic interest in other men, we can clearly see that he lacks sexual interest in anyone. This is a huge step in full LGBTQIA representation, as many other LGBTQ folks like to deny that ace folks are queer or that they even actually exist, insisting that not wanting to have sex with anyone isn't an orientation, but it clearly is. It's also nice that he is additionally depicted as homoromantic, as romantic orientation and sexual orientation are separate aspects of a person's identity. And while it is frequently assumed that all asexual people must also be aromantic and vice versa, real life shows us that this is clearly not the case. There are plenty of romantically inclined asexual folks and plenty of allosexual or not asexual folks who are aromantic. It's also important to note that not all people who consider themselves to be asexual are completely disinterested in all sex with anyone under any circumstances, as allosexuality and asexuality exist on a spectrum, not in a strict binary, and there are even demisexual people who may be considered to fall somewhere in between and can only have sexual interest in a person they are already significantly romantically involved with. Love is complicated, and it's great that Lower Decks doesn't shy away from this important fact. The next example of queer representation we see in Lower Decks occurs in Season 2, Episode 8, I, Excretus, in which the crew are mandated to undergo holopod conducted crew evaluations, which put the lower deckers in the positions of the senior officers and the senior officers in the positions of the lower deckers. As part of Mariner's evaluation, she is forced to run the Naked Time simulation, which mirrors the original series Season 1, Episode 6, The Naked Time, and the Next Generation concept repeat in Season 1, Episode 3, The Naked Now, in which the crews of the Constitution class and Galaxy class enterprises, respectively, are exposed to a chemical which simulates alcohol intoxication. In this simulation, Mariner runs into the Cerrito simulated bar in which she finds everyone having sex with everyone, but it's not all straight sex, as we see Jennifer making out with Ensign Barnes, 2 unnamed male crew members making out behind the bar, a threesome of unnamed crew members on a table, and Commander Jack Ransom being ridden by his subordinate, Lieutenant Commander Steve Stevens. Interestingly, when we briefly see Andy Billups in a quick pan of the bar, one may notice that he's just nakedly using a pad, not having sex with anyone, further confirming his ace status. It's a fun, silly scene, which I'm sure pissed off a lot of more regressive fans, and I loved it. I'm not sure if this next example really counts, but I know there are fans out there who would give me a down Sean Ferrick style if I didn't at least mention it, and it's a popular queer headcanon, so next we're going to talk about Brotherford. In Season 4, Episode 4, Something Borrowed, Something Green, we see Boimler and Rutherford move in as roommates. We know Rutherford is bi, and while we've seen that Boimler is attracted to women, briefly dating Lieutenant Barbara Brinson in Season 1, Episode 5, Cupid's Errant Arrow, that doesn't rule out that he might be bisexual too. It's at least interesting that they choose to refer to their dynamic buddy duo in character with what is clearly a ship name, combining parts of both their names together into a single moniker. And one might also find it a bit gay how they fight over who gets to miss their pet bonsai tree, Little Boney. Additionally, when at a later point in the episode, before Little Boney is devoured by a Chalnoth, they say the tree is like a son to them, which, in addition to their cutesy dialogue earlier in the episode, showing concern for how well each other sleeps with the other in the adjacent bunk, and their Mozart cosplay debate over whether to get an oil or watercolor painting of the Enterprise D for their quarters at the end of the episode, could all be read as gay, but I personally think they're just close friends. And this brings up an important talking point, in my opinion, namely that a lot of queer folks love to headcanon exceptionally close male friends, see Sam and Frodo from The Lord of the Rings, as gay, much to the frustration of more homophobic fans who have started arguing online that we need to stop making male friendships gay. But my personal opinion is that it's straight men who need to stop making close male friendships gay. It has always seemed to me that a lot of male friendships seem distant, at worst abusive, and at best devoid of what most women would consider normal, friendly signs of affection as simple as hugging, out of fear that if they do get close, they'll be read as gay. This is absolutely a straight male problem. I don't think it's normal. I think it's entirely rooted in homophobia, and that if they simply allowed themselves to normalize close friendships with other men, they'd be more emotionally stable and maybe even stop complaining about the frankly misogynist supposed male loneliness epidemic. In the end, my opinion on Brotherford is that they probably are just close friends, but if you want to headcanon them as being in a gay relationship, it's your headcanon, and that's totally up to you. Earlier in this video, we talked about Rutherford's gay holodeck fantasy with a holographic version of Lieutenant Commander Billups, and in that discussion, I mentioned how this is confirmed as gay in the show when they decide to run off together and get their own ship, to which Dr. Ta'ana's hologram responds, "Godspeed, you crazy faggots." Which brings up an interesting question. Faggot is a homophobic slur, and slurs can be reclaimed and used, but only by people who have the right to use them. So is Dr. Tana queer? Well, we know she dates Lieutenant Shax, who is a man, so she would at least have to be bi to count as queer, so is she? Well, this may be a bit of reading in, but I feel like her buffet quip about how Caitians used to hunt down and eat betazoids when a trio of female betazoid ambassadors visits sickbay in season 4, episode 5, Empological Fallacies, comes off as a bit flirtatious. Maybe Dr. Ta'ana is a little thirsty too, and not just hungry. I also think the show's writers are a bit too socially aware to have a character using a slur they can't reclaim, so I'm gonna go ahead and say that in my opinion, Dr. Tana is probably queer. Speaking of those Betazoid ambassadors, I almost forgot until rewatching that episode for this video that at least one of the Betazoids, Cathu, is apparently bi, as she hits relentlessly on Captain Freeman, as well as briefly on Commander Ransom before quickly deciding that he's not hard to get enough for her. So there's another queer character to add to our list. As you can clearly see, Lower Decks has got a lot of queer on the final frontier. Perhaps one of the best and most fan favorite examples of queer representation in Lower Decks was the fulfillment of a gay relationship fans have been waiting for decades, since it was never fulfilled in the original show, only teased in the intentionally queer acting of Andrew Robinson as Garrick, the Cardassian spy and tailor, in the 90s series Deep Space Nine, who regularly and flirtatiously shared a table every day with the station's Human Federation doctor, Julian Bashir, and I have to admit, it was an incredibly satisfying wish to finally have come true. In Lower Decks Season 5, Episode 9, Fisher Quest, we're treated to an adventure on a ship crewed by alternate universe duplicates of popular Star Trek characters ranging from Curzon Dax to an assortment of Harry Kims, almost all ensigns, all the way to an alternate universe Elam Garrick, who is a surgeon in his universe and married to an emergency medical hologram or EMH of, you guessed it, Dr. Julian Bashir. The couple's antics are great. They're from different universes, and according to Dax, love to brag about how statistically unlikely their pairing is. Something I've known a lot of queer couples to do, even when they come from the same universe. They argue over which of their universes they should live in, with Garrett continually pushing for his reality, citing the fine vintages of wines available from the two moons of his Risa, and the masseuses, which, as the EMH points out, don't really matter much to a photonic, before he sticks in a jealous jab at a particular bully and masseuse Garrick had just offered to take him to see. Bashir just wants to have a say in which universe they pick. It's a cute depiction and does a great service to the relationship gay audiences were all wishing for in the 90s, watching them share that table for all those years. If you'd like to see more videos on the queer history of Star Trek, there's a link on the left of the screen. If you'd like to support this channel, thank you. There's a link to my Patreon in the description, or if I become a partner one day, there should be a link on the screen to the right. Thanks for joining me on this Trek quest. Live long and watch Star Trek.